I would like to first start by thanking Introductory for showing a little sympathy towards us today, so that all of us could come and be a part of this phenomenal event. Most of you, I think, have been part of the first book launch, the first book launch we did with Sai Deepak. And it goes beyond saying that Bhagyanagar, Sai Deepak loves you. We are very, very proud of the fact that you belong to this city and the fact that you are leading the mantle for the country and for Dharma the way you are doing. I welcome you to Bhagyanagar. This time round, we are delighted to collaborate with Bharat. Bharat is doing phenomenal work, a lot of academic research work centering around our Dharma and Shastras, just about everything that is Indic. And I look forward to listening to you, Radha Krishna ji. Welcome to Aham Talks and welcome to our platform. Radha Krishna ji today will engage with Sai Deepak in a discussion around the book. I will be a mute spectator for some time, but you will also hear from me by the time we are done with this event. The flow of the event would be such that here on we would have Radha Krishna ji. I would be requesting Sai Deepak to say a few words, and after which Radha Krishna ji would engage with him on the book. Post which we will have the book signing. We will end up with the book signing. For now, I am very delighted to have an opportunity to release the book India, Bharat, Pakistan, and Constitutional Journey of a Sandwich Civilization with Sai Deepak.
Certain this book is going to, by very big volumes, outnumber the book one. Bhagyanagar surely loves you, Deepak ji.
Namaskaram. So, thank you so much for turning up on a Sunday, and especially a fantastic weather, Sunday in fact, such a fabulous weather. And for someone who lives in Delhi, I can't say this enough. I received a lot of messages on Instagram from participants of the Group 1 exam saying they're not in a position to turn up only because of the exam, asking me to push the event under any circumstances to the evening. But I have other commitments, and I think they were in a position to organize it only in the morning, given the number of events that are going on. I am also told that the Bhagyanagar City Police has given us a wonderful welcome. So I thank them for doing their best to create a lot of obstacles for this particular event. And I'm grateful to all the people who have turned up despite the warm welcome given to us and the cordial welcome given to us by the city police. Thank you so very much. That clearly shows that we are making an impact. For me, that's always a fantastic sign. When someone creates roadblocks or has a problem with what you're doing, that means you're on the right path. So, credit to this goes entirely to Monica ji. Allow me to make a statement. I hope this doesn't come across as a sexist statement. I wish we had more men like Monica ji. Someone who has the ability to take on the system. And maybe have Monica ji as the positive Mamata of Telangana. So, I've said this, and this is not something that is meant for, there's not dialogue play. There is both scholarly support for this, and there is a lot of sense behind this, that any movement which is led and which has, let's say, a solid grounding in the feminine is bound to succeed simply because one woman is capable of influencing four people at a time. And I subscribe to this for the simple reason that I don't subscribe to Western notions of feminism under any circumstances. I have no interest in saying so, which is one of the reasons that when I go to some of the law schools, in fact, there were posters basically saying, especially after the Sabrimala movement, Brahmin go back, misogynist go back. These are all institutions which are located out of Sonipat, named after one of the great emperors of Bharat. And some of them are basically institutions named after a steel entity. So in these institutions, this was a warm welcome that was given to me. To vindicate their grievances against me, I went there dressed in saffron kurta. And I basically said, I accept all the allegations that are leveled against me. I plead guilty. So there's a bit of a goodness that I think makes, it needs to be shared with my home audience. One, this book has obviously done better than the first book because of a captive audience in the first book. But independent of that, only last evening I received the email that it's been longlisted for the Bangalore Lit Fest in the non-fiction category. In the long list, I think it's in number 3. And so far, the reason why this book has not reached the number 1 position in Amazon in its respective categories is because India that is Bharat is not letting it do so. India that is Bharat continues to be number 1. And therefore, I'm very, very grateful to the audience and people who have read the book despite the archaic language, despite the lawyer trying to do his best to showcase what he knows. And the credit, therefore, I say, when it comes to this book, entirely goes to the audience. Because you see, I was playing effectively to my strengths. And your strengths need not necessarily be relatable to the readership, to the audience. For the audience to make sense of it and to take ownership of it, last evening I met members of the Telugu writing ecosystem. Are they here? I hope they're here. I don't know if they're there. So these people have made it a point to actually hold book discussions on each chapter of the book every week. And now with the Telugu Anuvadam coming out in November, I hope that there is great appreciation of this. The Hindi Anuvadam has already gone to the press, so hopefully we should have books by the end of this month. And Telugu should come out in November. And I hope it coincides with Baba's birthday on 23rd of November. Let's see if that happens. As far as the book is concerned, I think a lot of things were happening while the book was being written. Without sounding mercenary or opportunist or cynical, allow me to say this, that I think the success of the book is partly owed to the atmospherics that we currently live in, wherein its relevance has become self-evident to people because you're effectively seeing a repeat of history across the board. Therefore, the very conscious comparison that I have resorted to as part of the book is to draw parallels between the Bharat of 1920s and the India of 2020s. To say that history is repeating itself, unfortunately so, apart from the traditional aggressor bearing his fangs once more, and apart from the response from this side being as insipid as before. And I think, I was having this conversation with Monika ji and other people last evening, that Telangana is going to be one of those battlegrounds. Of course, entire Bharat is a battleground, that's a different issue. But given the presence of certain erudite gentlemen here from certain parts of the city, certain barristers, I do believe that this city is going to be a serious flashpoint. At the Pune launch, at the Mumbai launch and the Delhi launch, I said this, that perhaps you need to be able to now discard the tendency to celebrate individuals and create cults and focus on creating a sense of community, because that is what is going to protect you in the future. The purpose of these book talks and these book tours is not to edify my work, because let me say this at the expense of sounding immodest. Whether I do a book talk or not, this book will sell 100%, simply because of the social media following that I have. So I don't need to resort to these book talks for the purpose of selling this particular book, but the idea is to convey a sense of urgency in people, especially the next generation, saying, while you keep hugging the Constitution and let's say deifying it, they seem to be hugging their books better and they seem to be able to live by the principles of their positions better, which is the single biggest lesson that I think we as a community need to learn. The day you have surrendered the constitution or the place in the Veda for the constitution or any other scripture that you believe in which is within the dharmic fold, I genuinely believe that you have conceded that your commitment to holding on to your principles is certainly lower and weaker than the other states. This is the first thing that I want to explain. Had this particular position come from a non-lawyer, then there's a decent chance that this particular position is dismissed as a rhetoric or a political rhetoric. The idea is to use my position as a practicing advocate who understands the constitution better than most people, to say that this book is the product of multiple compromises, and typically these compromises have come at the expense of the civilization of the Bharatiya Sanskrit. And therefore, it is time that you stop operating from a position of concession, compromise, and samjhauta. This need not be the position anymore. This should not be the position anymore. You don't have the luxury of operating from this position anymore. Intransigence and lack of moderation is the name of the game from here on. I'm saying this bluntly, as clearly as possible. And for this to happen, this is not going to happen from these books. It's not going to happen on the basis of this book. This book is merely a call asking the community to go back to its basics, which means hold on to your sampradayas and hold on to your dharma. Your daily practice is as important as your, let's say, your efforts in understanding what's happening at the political level. If you are not a committed Hindu from a personal perspective, don't expect to be a committed Hindu from a political perspective. A political Hindu who does not have conviction will at best whine from Facebook and Sabarimala is being violated, but a committed Hindu who does not understand Facebook will stand in front of the temple and take the lathi blows of the police. That is the distinction. So finally understand this distinction. Respect the people who are your frontline organizations who are in a position to defend you when there is trouble. Stop operating from a bourgeois middle class mentality where you have this habit of rubbishing their efforts. This is not the way. These are the only people who you can fall back on when the secular institution of the state chooses to be unsecular. And therefore, please protect these organizations, give them your vocal support. I strongly believe that if the middle class and the upper middle class Hindu community can be more Hinduized, to a significant extent this population and this segment of the population can achieve a lot more in terms of civilizational goals for multiple reasons. Let me explain why. Every thriving economy fundamentally requires a vast middle class, because you are the ones who are law-abiding, you are the ones who give tax revenues because it's tedious at the outset, there is no way that you can hide anything under the sun. That's one. And therefore, you already have the economic veto in your hand. Second, you are the one who is forced to invest in education because you don't have land and property to support you typically. And since you are forced to, let's say, invest in education, the expectation is that you're better at it than most people. Because the ones who survive in business and the ones who come from the business community, let's say they worship Lakshmi more than Saraswati. So you know the value of Saraswati more. The ones who come from the lower strata, poor people really don't have the time for this because they're fighting for their livelihood on a regular basis. So they don't have the time or the patience or the bandwidth to actually invest in Sanskriti because their fight is for 2 square meals each a day. The fight therefore is your fight. And that's typically why the middle class Hindu is the subject of attacks from the left. Your values are typically at the receiving end of all these attacks. Whether it is the celebration of your festivals or whatever it may be, you are the target, not the best. If the middle class Hindu were to vanish completely from the Hindu, let's say, identity or its segment altogether, to my mind, for all practical purposes, this body will collapse because this is the spine that's keeping up this particular community together. And therefore, my investment is asking more and more people from this particular segment to invest in the community, to invest in civilization, and to fight dual battles. One is the battle of livelihood and also the battle of civilization. Unfortunately or fortunately, you're the only ones capable of doing this. Do not treat this as a curse. It's a blessing when you're given an opportunity to serve the cause of Dharma. That's all I want. So while you educate your children in the values of, let's say, so-called modern education, and you expect them to climb the social ladder, that aspirational, upwardly mobile, let's say, facet of your personality, read in. I'm not asking you to give it up. If someone were to ask me what is the purpose of all my cogitations, I am trying to present a workable model which is capable of being replicated across the board, saying, as an English-speaking, fairly successful practitioner of the law, I am capable of straddling two different boats. One is my professional boat, which gives me the independence to do what I have to do. The other is the civilization boat. I am pegging myself at perhaps the lowest possible category and I'm asking the simple question, if I can do this, why can't you? The mistake that most people make after watching these talks or whatever it is, I wish we could be like him, we don't think we can be like him. I'm sorry, I hope you're not drawing these lessons. That the purpose of these, let's say, these outreach programs is defeated. The idea is not to present an unworkable ideal which you deify or worship or create a cult around, but the idea is to create a replicable model which all of us can implement. The other thing that I would certainly want to build on is protection of civilization doesn't come from earning dollars in California. You need to be able to invest heavily in the state ecosystem. So please do not look down upon your children if they're interested in occupying positions in state public service commissions, because that's where the battle starts. Whether it is in the police or let's say the local administration or wherever it is. If you want your children to take up law, also invest in them to the extent that they're able to look at the judiciary as a potential option, not just making money as a lawyer. Please, both these options are equally important. Because you have to realize that the way democracy works, it gives the illusion of you being in power. It also gives the illusion of the government being in power, neither of which is true. The reality is that it's the steel frame, which is the bureaucracy, that is always in power. It is the administrative structure which is always in power. Governments will come and go, politicians will come and go, but bureaucrats are here to stay. So as we say in our fraternity, judges will come and go, lawyers are here to stay. Because we won't be transferred, the rosters won't change, we are there. So therefore, after a point we basically say, हम यहाँ पे रहेंगे, आपको जो करना है करना चाहिए. That is exactly how the bureaucracy operates. One of the things that I have done as part of the book is to actually explain how the other community has brilliantly understood this point, especially how Sai Deepak understood this point. And the very purpose of establishing the Aligarh Muslim University, formerly known as the Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College, was to create people who could occupy positions in the colonial establishment, because English-speaking Hindus had started occupying those positions and they did not want the Hindus back in state power. And therefore the establishment of this institution, its very, let's say, founding principles, was to compete with the Hindu in the administrative setup. Unfortunately, that vision is succeeding today because we are investing more in the private sector as opposed to the state administration. Now, the reason why they are able to invest more in the state administration as opposed to private sector, does it mean that they don't need money? Of course they need money. But they have a safety net that they've created, and the safety net has come from zakat. And that means they have managed to create a safety net which has come from their religious institutions, which allows individuals to pursue these goals and push the agenda of the community. Now you understand why I keep fighting for freedom of temples. This is the point. This is the point. That it has the ability to create a safety net so that you're in a position to push people into these strategic departments and to make sure that whether or not you're doing something negative for others, at the very least you're able to protect your interest and preserve your interest. My agenda is positive, not negative. Whether it is from a civilization perspective or a political perspective, I'm asking you to develop a positive narrative so that you know what you're supposed to do as opposed to being interested in what he is going to lose. Whether it is from a uniform civil code perspective or let's say reclamation of temples, all my positions are based on I am not interested in finding out how many cheeks and how many times has he got slapped. I simply don't want my cheek to be slapped by the government once more. Period. These are first principle priorities which don't need an IQ of 120 or 200. These can be even thought of or conceived of with an IQ of 60 or 80. These are plain, straightforward, let's say, deliverables which the community can work towards. Every time I go to any of these talks, I think there's a tendency, once people look at the magnitude of the problem, everybody asks, how do we contribute to the problem at such a huge level? Aap apni auqat mein ho. Which means you address the problem at your level. Which means you address the problem at the familial level. At the immediate, let's say, local level, in your own constituencies, in your own wards, in your own taluks. This is what you should be able to do. The most visible direct impact of the change in the demographics is going to be felt not at the All India level, but in your ability to celebrate your festivals in your locality first. It will start with, let's say, your inability to follow any of your dietary restrictions, which means as a vegetarian you cannot, even as a non-vegetarian, you will be forced to consume halal. That is how this affects your ability to practice your way of life. If there can be certain areas where our processions are not allowed, well, why can't I have certain areas where others cannot be allowed? I am asking this question bluntly. If the media is comfortable reporting certain places in certain cities as this dominated and that dominated, you admit that no matter what you got from the constitution's perspective, this is the reality of the society. People will gravitate towards like-minded people, period. You have not been able to change that so far. Your so-called unity in diversity has not translated to people living with each other. It has only translated to people living in one city but in their own respective parts. And that is only going to get worse. So my simple suggestion is, forget decoloniality, forget civilization, forget constitution. Please don't get into these esoteric areas. You stick to basic principles. First principles. Your jati and varna, whether they are important or not, is for you to decide. But your jati and varna identities shall never become a limiting agent in your ability to create a Hindu identity, a dharmic identity, always remember this. No single community, notwithstanding its strength within the Hindu community, has the ability to withstand what is coming our way. You will not be able to survive alone. Remember this. Always remember this. So there's this fantastic movie called JFK, where one of the characters is telling the lead character that the organizing principles of the state is war, which means that the state's ability or its robustness is tested on its ability to defend itself in the event of war. So you should ask yourself if this particular community has the strength to withstand whatever it translates to in a civil context. I've given all the words, now put the two words together. Now therefore what I'm trying to tell you is, limit your varna and jati identities to your home and your societal transactions within, let's say, your family. But when you interact with people outside, the only identity that you will look for is tika hai, tilak hai, Hindu hai, baat khatam. Beyond that, I am not interested. Stripped to its most fundamental form, this is the essence of Savarkar's Hindutva, this is the essence of Aurobindo's Hindutva, this is the essence of Vivekananda's Hindutva. So if you read Shri Aurobindo's work, or even for that matter you read Swami Vivekananda, people have this fashionable tendency to say, oh, they were against the Jati system, they were against the Varna system. In all their personal positations and their letters, Shri Aurobindo writes publicly that politics is the realm of the Kshatriya. I invite the Kshatriyas to take back the space. The reason why the Hindu society's political, let's say, position is weak is because that space has been ceded by the Kshatriyas to non-Kshatriyas. He's saying this as much. You go and find out whether he said this in a cultural sense, in a civilization sense, in a spiritual sense, or in a jati sense. You find it out. But he used the word Kshatriya very clearly. After having set up the first ashram in the United States, the Ramakrishna Mission's very first ashram was set up in the United States, if I'm not wrong. He basically said to one of his disciples, Swami Vivekananda, I have introduced United States to a Kshatriya, I will now bring in a Brahmin. This is his language. His language. I'll give you a citation also. Or if I'm very trouble, please go to Ramakrishna Math and Domal and you get everything. So the point I'm trying to make is, no identity has been created by Sanatana Dharma to weaken the larger fabric. Remember this. Every attempt has been to actually integrate without killing your uniqueness within that particular integrated whole. Never allow any particular identity, whether it's linguistic or caste identity or jati identity or any other identity, to blind you from this big picture vision. Because then you may succeed in pitting the Tamils against the Telugus the moment, let's say, Ponniyin Selvan is released, and you'll sit and compare Bahubali with this, stupidly. You'll say, oh, we did this, we did that, and the other fellow will be sitting and making fun of you. You should be happy that such movies are released across the board. Let me share this with the comment at the outset. Bahubali was the pioneer, and therefore others are following suit. That's a fact. I am not saying this to actually placate your egos. I am saying this because Rajamouli has shown that it's possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't have expected someone like Maniratnam with this communist track record to create a Ponniyin Selvan the way he has. Maniratnam's name is not Maniratnam, by the way. With Subramaniam and something. He changed it. He's changed it because he did not want his so-called Jati identity to be revealed, apparently. This is what they did. And his relative Kamal Haasan is a different extent altogether. He is a different level altogether. When it is convenient, Hinduism creates fanatics. When it is inconvenient, Hinduism did not exist. ये order even करूँ कैसे चलता है मैं कभी तक समझ में नहीं आता. So be happy if you have triggered something positive and you are forcing others to follow suit. But let me also say this. Now I hope this lands on you differently. Don't let the Dravidianist cancer enter the Telugu film industry. When a superbly made movie like Shyam Singh Roy comes, don't watch. Yes. It is a diabolically beautifully made movie. He has managed to push the agenda brilliantly. But people must know, we do not resort to violence. We are patriots. We will follow civil disobedience. Which means we will not accept whatever commodity you put under any circumstances. If it is to our detriment in the long run, the short run, not done, not happening, never again is the policy. I am trying to infuse this spirit by telling you what happens when there is a demographic change, because that is effectively what happened, or that led to the partition of Bengal and resistance. Read how within a span of 20 years the demographic changed. And it was 1.92 crores versus 1.76 crores. Game over. Game over. And when you think of Bengal, don't think of current day Bengal or including West Bengal and Bangladesh. The original Bengal province included parts of United Provinces, included parts of what is Bihar today. So Bengal was almost the largest province as part of British India. Its size is unimaginable. Assam and all these states put together was Bengal. So when you're looking at partition of Bengal, you're looking at everything else, then eastern Bengal and Assam together. That's how it was cleaved and partitioned. Read that history. The moment the partition of Bengal happens, our dear, blessed, wonderful Friday preachers came out and said, the law has taken the leave of absence for a period of 3 months. We will not be arrested or prosecuted for whatever we do. It is time to revive the blessed flag. And therefore, a fatwa was issued asking the peaceful and the faithful to convert, rape and marry Hindu widows. I cannot be challenged from this. These are facts. Does this not remind you of the situation today in Bengal and other parts of the country? From Shakti Kshetra to Parashurama Kshetra, this is the situation. That is from the northeast, Ishanyamulam to here. Here is the situation. So my suggestion would be this. If you make the mistake of treating any of my public engagements as motivational speeches, you are insulting me and your intelligence. You can use this as a way of inviting people into the serious conversation. But beyond that, the responsibility is entirely yours. I am recalibrating my own timelines. I previously said it was 25 years. I don't think it's 25 years anymore. I'm looking at what is going to happen even at 2030. From 24 to 30 is a crucial period at every possible level. The stars are aligning in such a way that this community will be forced to take a position. Do you want Gandhi or do you want Shri Aurobindo? It is for you to decide. Jai Shri Ram.